Thanks, Alfonso. Wow, it's a great honour to be here. Thank you very much for that beautiful introduction. I'm going to take a sip of water. Yeah, I'm kind of nervous. It always is, like when there's some attention on you, that nerves, there's a sort of vibration going on. Zzz. Yeah, it's just wonderful to be here in Portugal. And to be here in Porto in this amazing building. And Afonso, I want to say thank you very much for bringing me along, and to all the crew at Norte Fest, Surfing Fest. I think thank you very much for having me here today, and thank you for your wonderful hospitality so far. And everyone in Portugal, thank you for the warm welcoming. It's a funny thing. I'm here. When I heard that I was coming here to, had the opportunity to come and speak, I got a awareness of the email a little bit late, and I hit Afonso. I said, "Oh, I didn't realize this was an opportunity." And I thought I'd love to be involved. And my brother had a really wonderful experience here last year, and I thought, geez, I'd love to join my brother and in the experience. And to be honest, I didn't know what I was going to talk about. There's a lot to talk about, right? One thing started to sort of spark and bubble to the surface in something that I really, has been I've come to as an older surfer on this planet. I'm 63 now. I started surfing when I was 7 in Sydney as a kid. And just to give you a little background of, where surfing came from for me, is my mother gave me a surfboard only 2 months prior to her passing. So that surfboard, that gift at Christmas in 1968 was a surfboard, came out from underneath the bed, and and this gift of a surfboard's been holding me ever since in the ocean. And so that in itself is a great example of, why I'm here. Why I'm here. And it's been doing it ever since. I've been able to, and I've never really truly been afraid of the ocean for some reason. I can't tell you that. But it's always held my fascination, the power source that it offers us, its constant giving, and also it wants to take. So I have to be alert when I'm in the ocean. And that's what's so wonderful, that sense of being alive. And I love the previous speaker's idea that it's sort of, there's a muscle of the intuition, and how she drew our attention to how powerful that intuition is, Beautiful. And that's held me through all kinds of measure of challenges out here on the land, right? But that gift of that surfboard, sent me in all sorts of directions. Okay, so, and also, just before we go, just a little technicality, because my mind kind of wanders off, I'll need to sort of relocate it to sort of what I like to sort of come here. Otherwise, I'll just go on forever. Because that's the nature of the ocean, right? She just seems to go on forever. And it sort of bubbles up, constantly bubbling up in me. And what I didn't know I was getting myself into was the fact that, my first individual experiences of surfing, from the first time I stood up on the board, on this beautiful green EPS, it was epoxy, it was just foam surfboard. It was a Thursday afternoon, right? I'll never forget it, that I actually finally got up and stood up, and the sun was shining into my eyes, and my father and my late sister, we lost our sister when we were, this is back when I was 26 years of age in a car accident. So I was finally going to get up, and I got up. I'll never forget it. It felt like time stood still, and I'm flying into the shore break. I'm going, yes, I'm up. Yes, like frothing. 7 years of age, mind's popping. The sun's blaring through, and I come off in the shore break. Bam! I'm on the sand just getting flogged in the shore break. I got up and going, Dad, did you see that? I was standing up for about a minute. But he goes, like my father was, very, stoic, very, Tom, you're up for about a second. Oh! And my sister's laughing. I didn't know where Nick was, but my brother Nick, my dear brother Nick. And that individual experience really set the fire, that spark. Kind of got, I want more of that straight away. And so, but I didn't know, what I was getting myself into. I really didn't know. And, if you did know, perhaps you'd go, oh, shit, what's going look what you're about to do to yourself. And, I wouldn't swap anything of the journey, from that point to now. And lo and behold, the individual, I want to sort of bring our attention to contradictions, this kind of, and the sharing aspect here, and the big contradiction that I kind of lived with throughout my life in surfing. And I had to come to terms with it. And that was the idea that it was one person a ride, okay? And I had to fight for that. And in my eventually sort of coming to, learning how to, you can see here actually just an example. Two of the kind of, Jerry Lopez is on the inside, crouching down. He's on the yellow board. And the late Derek Ho, one of my rivals at Pipeline, surfing together on a wave at Pipeline, sharing the ride, okay? And there's something about it that both sort of tickles the kind of, it'd be nice to share the ride, But we all know that the person on the inside, when there's a good wave coming, right, and there's good waves, there's a point break, and there's a whole bunch of surfers, it's one person per ride, things get a little tricky, right? Particularly in the human mind. And so my experience starts really in a very competitive environment growing up in Newport Beach, on the northern beaches in the late 70s, pretty much through the mid 70s and in the 70s. Surfing wasn't this thing it is today where it's quite accepted, it's everyone's surfing basically. It's like kids to parents, and everyone's like coaching. There's all this stuff going on. Surf schools everywhere. No. Particularly for myself, learning to surf, and you think about this, we were trying, me and my friends, and of course I needed my friends. This is where we need our friends. We were trying to get to the main surf break on the beach. It's called the Peak. So it breaks right and left. And so there's plenty of opportunity, but there's the older surfers at the beach kind of ruled the Peak. And one of them was Derek Hind. You may know of Derek Hind. Brilliant surfer. He was the best surfer at the beach. And you're always looking at the best surf, being a frothing grom, learning. But there was no one to teach us anything back then. It was just kind of make it up as you go, Tom. And so I soaked up everything. But getting to that peak in the morning before they arrived was my first goal. So I could get to the peak. But as soon as they turned up, get down the beach, kicked out, go back to down the south end of the beach where there's just closing out, you know. And that was how it started, really. And so the competitive drive was sort of really just bouncing out between my friends and I. And that sort of idea of sharing the ride was non-existent at that time. And so you know, and I kind of like, I used to, you know, have this Bible called The Australian Pictorial History of Surfing by Hamlin. And they used, in this book, it used to have these beautiful etchings, you know, and pictures of like where surfing came from. And this is like a kind of a depiction of Hawaii, surfing in Hawaii, and it kind of gets a feeling that people were surfing together, right? And they're actually surfing the same wave. And not only that, there was other pictures, and I was a very visual person. I wasn't like my brother who, by the way, on that Christmas day, I thought he was going to get the surfboard, but he got books. That's when my mind went poof. But he would read this book. I wasn't a reader. I was a visual learner in every aspect. And I needed to go outside and have the experience from a young age. So I just look at the pictures in this book, which fascinated me. And you could see that the kind of the almost like joy-like body kind of language and so on of riding the wave together, it all seemed to make sense to me, and it was the flicker of something in me about what was really kind of necessary at some level. But, of course, competition itself, getting drawn into it, I didn't really, to be honest, I didn't start surfing for competition. It was something else going on within me to make sense of what just happened to me as a young kid, as losing his mother. So all of a sudden I was gaining kind of this, you know, surfing as a somatic, a body experience, a full-bodied experience that takes us away from, and I have to sense the mind, and we were just talking about the journey between the mind and body. In our last beautiful speak, you know, just bringing ourselves back into the heart, surfing does this naturally. I didn't know all about that when I was 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, but I was moving towards the ocean as soon as I possibly could each day, just to get that full-bodied experience within myself to literally recalibrate the system into sort of moving beyond this experience that I was trying to experience and make sense of the world on land without my mother, which was till to this day very, very esoteric, if you like. They're very esoteric and quite, surreal. So competition itself, you know, I landed into that competitive environment. It was, you know, my friends and then other people from outside would come to the beach and we get to see how good they are. And I'll never forget my buddy, my close friend at the time that I learned how to surf with, his name was Michael Tremolo. Mike. We call him Twemlow. You just didn't call him by his first name. He was just Twemlow. And he was cheeky. He's very feisty. And kind of, I was always been between breaking him up from fights, you know. Come on, mate, fuck. Always wanted to go, like, you know. And he had that kind of wild thing to him. But we used to on a Friday, on a Saturday morning, we used to hitchhike together with our boards or get on a bus and travel 3 beaches north to the most northern beach on the northern beaches of Sydney called Palm Beach. It was a board riders club there. We discovered there was a board riders club there called Peninsula Board Riders, and we'd somehow get ourselves up there, and we'd stay with a friend overnight. We were like 12 years old. And we'd just say, we're just going to Palm Beach to our parents, and we'll see you on Sunday night. Yeah, okay. This is the way it was, right? Freedom to move, and particularly, I was just allowed to do that at 12 years of age, 11, 12, 13. And we'd end up at this beach, and we'd have this whole weekend of kind of this free, we're just living in this with our buddy there, had a really lovely house. It was kind of almost haunted. We thought it was haunted, and we felt it was haunted. And so we had this excitement, the whole feeling. But the Board Riders Club, Peninsula Board Riders, was where I really had my first experience with surfing competition and the idea of it. And I don't know how I did it, but just one heat at a time, one wave at a time, one whatever. I didn't know. I got this trophy, and I had first on it for winning the cadet. The cadets are the young kids, and I won this trophy, and I never forget this day, never, because it's one of those moments where ambition starts to sort of flow. And the president of the club, he came down to me. I had this trophy after the awards, and he goes, "Hey, Tom," he's got this clipboard, right? And he's just a lovely guy, this guy, and he was a brilliant surfer. I loved watching him surf. He really had this flow and style and grace, and I really took his, he's passed now. Thank you, Owen. And he was the family which I'd stay with. He's the bigger brother. But he had a beautiful presence, and he said, "Tom," and I never forget, we're on this low tide, and it was this grey kind of afternoon, and he goes, "Yeah, Owen, what?" And he goes, "Tom, would you like to enter the Northern Beaches area competition?" I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "Well, it's when we compete against all the cadets of all our northern beaches of Sydney. It's the area competition." I said, "Wow, yeah, okay." And because I got this first place thing, I said, "What happens if you win that?" He goes, "Well, you go to the New South Wales state." And I went, "What? State? Everyone in the state? We compete against every best kid in the state?" He goes, "Yes." I said, "What if I win that?" And he go, "Well, you go to the Australian titles." I go, "Wow, everyone in Australia?" And it sort of just went poof, poof, poof. And then I asked the question, "What happens if I win the Australian?" "Yeah, you go to the world title." I was just like, whoa. And in that instant, it just went poof, 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 poof. Now, I didn't say I was going to be a world champion. I just didn't come into my vocabulary. It wasn't a part of it. But I never forget that moment. It was very impactful for this young kid, 12 years old, and was just feeling that recognition from his peers, that sort of lifting feeling. But I didn't know where it was taking me, like I said, but it was taking me further and further in a narrow path, kind of narrowing down, a kind of a narrowing down and narrowing down, narrowing down. And I got more and more motivated to get that wave, right? To have that wave as my wave. And this is what happens as a surfer. We tend to kind of narrow the mind down And back then, girls, women, it was highly male-orientated world I was moving towards. It's just, there was one female surfer at our beach at Newport, and God bless you, Kay Jarman. She had to fight for her waves. And I used to think, Kay, what? Are you sure? Like, look at these guys. Like, I'm in a frothing pack of guys pushing, competing against each other, and in driving that sort of testosterone. And we're pushing and pushing. And Kay's out there kind of figuring it out, you know. And I just go, wow, Kay, you're like a mate. I used to really feel for her and go, man, go for it, you know. She was the first one who actually kind of, I'll talk about sharing, that kind of opened that little gap, really. I'll give Kay a wave because it's too much for her. And I used to, but then I get overwhelmed with, you know, the drive. And the drive to have that particular little moment and of wave to myself. And so one of my surfboard shaper at the time was my mentor. His name was Colin Smith, the most radical surfer in the world at that time in the mid-70s. So this is around about 77, 76, 77, 78, right about where this photograph is taken. And I've got a knee guard on. We'll go into that later. But I used to go surfing North Narrabeen. I don't know if you ever heard of North Narrabeen. Highly competitive lineup. It's about just a few beaches south of where I grew up. North Narrabeen actually has a very deep, rich surfing heritage within itself of performance surfing, particularly. I'm talking about performance surfing. I mean, there's many other kinds, but for these guys, it's very, very competitive. Now, I used to watch Cole Smith, who was a local there, and he was the legend, and he could get any wave he wanted, even if you're on it. And Cole, he'd just start going, all his turns were U-turns. So it's always, wow, 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 wow. Like, I used to go, whoa, I want to surf like that. And he was just, and so he'd take off on a wave. Anyone behind him would just, whoa. So, funnily enough, I used to sit down on the inside and watch what Cole did. I didn't know the information that was being fed into me, but it was powerful because he was my man, and I loved Cole, and he shaped these boards for me that were just magic, and but I thought that's the way you surf North Narrabeen. If I'm going to get a wave out here in this mat, I'm going to have to do something like that. And so that started to inform my surfing. As you can see here, this is Rocky Point in 1978, a very different time again in surfing when the North Shore, just surfing on the North Shore wasn't friendly. It just wasn't a friendly place to surf. Everyone's kind of like stink eye, you know? It's aggressive, and there was always these guys trying to rule the lineup, and hard to get waves, right? And I'm out there just this frothing grom, and I've got to find a wave somehow. And I started to take on what Cole Smith was sort of inadvertently kind of giving me. That information was to start, well, I'm going to have to ride with you guys. I'm going to have to risk my life to get a wave. Not because of the wave's going to hit me, but some big guy, you know. And there was a lot of big guys when I'm just this little, right? Small. So I had to work my way around the lineup, pick the people that I could possibly drop in on, just to find a wave on the north shore of Oahu, particularly the good breaks. And that's how I started to navigate my surfing. And it became fun, right? I started to make it a fun thing. Lo and behold, it wasn't fun for others. But from a competitive point of view, I just had this drive to get better at what I was doing, because I was in exchange, I was getting this recognition. So I kind of liked that building effect of what it was doing for me. So that way of navigating the lineup and finding a wave, that became part of my repertoire, was dropping in. And so I started getting a bit of a reputation. And the reputation, well, there's a photograph of my dear brother, older brother. He's 2.5 years older than me. He's an ambassador, and that's me. Just around about that time when our mother was very ill, at my local beach now, which is Avalon, and we're looking out, just looking out to sea, and you think, what are we looking at when we look out to sea, right? But if there's ever a person, and I notice that there's a few people, I've come across these people on this planet, when someone's competitive 24/7, you know that? 24/7, it's like someone who's just got to compete to walk through the doorway. Someone's got to compete to eat faster than the other person. If I'm going to finish mine before you, so I can go. Well, my brother epitomizes the competitor. Highly competitive. But some part of me is not like that. Some part, I recognize that, but I would, I'd just bite. I'd just bite onto that. And so my brother was the driving force, I tell you, in regard to that competitive drive, that person that started to come forward and started to want and started to need and go for it. And this is my brother, but and he was a journalist. He's a journalist, right? So he had to wear whatever little brother was doing, unfortunately. And you can see this one is where I used to impose myself on my brother, because this is at Sunset Beach in 1982, where I'd find a wave with him. This is he's my brother. I'm going to drop in on him. Right? Dropping in. There's 2 words. Is it 3 or 2 words? Yeah. What am I talking about? It's 2 words. And so this is just the result of kind of that mindset, right? Where I was just that hungry. I just loved surfing. And particularly at this break, Sunset Beach, because there's a lot of space on the wave, we started to sort of surf together anyway, my brother and I, on the wave, even though sometimes he wasn't agreeable. But this is the really part of the journey where we started to sort of understand that we could actually get more waves together than what we did individually at a place like Sunset Beach, particularly when everyone's got stink eye, and we're having fun. So that was a kind of an opening right there. And I think in the 80s, there was a lot going on in the ocean, and particularly around that stink eye effect. It was just really hard to find someone who was actually enjoying themselves in the water. And I'm just full of that stuff that comes up, right? When you're surfing, joy. I'm like, what's going on here? You know, why is everyone so like stink eye? You know, why are we so? I want to fight because and the fact that the actual wave had just disappeared and we're left with all this kind of anger, you know. And I saw it so often. I thought, this is not where I really wanted to go. And there's been one instance particularly in Hawaii that actually sort of kind of informed me. Was the Pipeline Masters in 1984. I wasn't there at the beach this time, but a friend that I really connected with in the water, his name was Steve Massafella. They used to call him Beaver. I don't know why. Don't ask me. But Beaver was in the Pipeline Masters this day, and he smashed his head on the reef. And I heard that he got medevaced out for being knocked out. They saved him. They revived him somewhat, but he'd had a head injury. And he was the one guy in the water that I really liked being with because he had that same froth. He had that same energy, and I connected with it. And he was always a joy to surf with. So whenever I saw him, I connected with him. We'd kind of create this little joy space in the lineup, and against all odds, you know. And it was a lovely thing to be with. And this is a little story around head protection, by the way. Anyway, you know, back then we never got any information instantly through these things. We didn't know what happened to Beaver. And it wasn't until next winter that I turned up at Sunset Beach, and I'd heard that he'd had to get surgery, and that's it. I didn't know anything else. And anyway, I saw out at Sunset Beach. Sunset Beach was about 8 to 10 feet. There was a lot of people in the lineup, and there was one person with this bright orange helmet. And I've gone, I was talking to some friends getting prepped, frothing, yeah, let's go. And I go, who's the kook with the helmet on? And they said, oh, that's Beaver. But Tom, one friend who knew him said, Tom, he's not Beaver anymore. I'm going, what? What do you mean? He goes, yeah, he has had head injury and he's not quite like he was. And so I thought, wow. The first thing I did was paddle out. I went straight out to him to say hello, to see him, because I wanted to experience this other Beaver. And he was different. His look in his eye, his words were different. He was didn't have that same froth. And that's what sort of got me moving by using a helmet at Pipeline. That was the sort of like the little bit of that little spark that said Tom. And it took me 3 years to put a helmet on. And that says a lot for us surfers, right? And how much the sensory experience, from the sensory experience that we don't want to dull, all the way to how we want to look, right? But I'm so glad that today it's become a lot more accepted. But it took me 3 years to get over my own shit. So, and that's what we're sort of moving towards here. You can see how this is a famous moment in surfing. I don't know whether you've ever seen this on the free ride. It's a moment when Mark Richards drops in on Sean Thompson in 1977 at Backdoor. MR was he wanted to get Sean back, right? Because Sean apparently had dropped in but didn't know, right? The drop in. Of course, we want to be careful about sharing waves, right? You've got to be this good to be able to share a wave of that critical nature. So, but Sean of course, used this to his advantage to show MR how to ride the barrel, or actually showcase. He didn't really want it to show on the moment, but showcase how the single fin in waves like that were going to run deeper in the barrel. So it was always, there's something there, the information coming through. And of course they are spectacular boards to be in the barrel with. The twin fin MR was breaking ground and actually teaching the world how to surf on a twin fin and actually breaking ground. But that wave shared is still one of those iconic moments in surfing, and actually like a little apex where surfing changed kind of forever at that point. And Mark Richards started to bring in the twin fin, the speed and agility and so on, which eventually gave us the thruster. A shared moment. And this is my dear brother and I, again, sharing. Now, it was around about the mid-'80s when I met, well, there'd been this Tahitian surfer on tour. I don't know whether you ever can remember Vatia David Poto. Great Tahitian surfer. He could surf anything. Just this brilliant Polynesian sort of style and grace and connection to the ocean. And I went on a trip, my first trip to Tahiti in 1986. And at that point, there weren't many surfers in Tahiti. And I travelled over to Moorea Island, which is right next to Tahiti. There's no surfers on Moorea at that time. Some surfers had come for a little trip over to the island from Tahiti, maybe on a weekend. And it just so happened this one surf, I was world champion pro surfer guy, like I'm like the best guy in the world, right? And I'm like killing it, but I'm in the zone. Got this left called Hapiti, no one's around. I finally found it. No one, just me, waves to myself, right? The world champ, I've got it all to myself. Beautiful day. I'll never forget it. It was just a crystal clear day, and I got the little boat we had. I was there with my wife-to-be, and anyway, it was the reef pass. There's this left and there's a right, and this left's pretty solid. It's about 6 to 8 feet maybe. Every now and then a couple of bigger waves, but strong. Just this is it. I've got this spot to myself, right? I've got to figure it out. I just love that feeling of being in the ocean in that sort of wild state where I've got to figure it all out, what the wave's doing. It was just right where I wanted to be. No one else. My partner's in the boat and she's just cruising, watching. And anyway, she bodyboarded, but she didn't like surfing, that sort of stuff. But I'm thinking I'm the king, right? And so, and all of a sudden a boat turns up. It's like 3 Tahitians, right? 3, and they jump in, they paddle out, and I take it away, they just drop in. Right? I'm going, what? I'm like, what's going on here? And they're just, taking off and go, yeah, they're just sort of, the really light-hearted Tahitians. They've got this beautiful way about them. And they're beautiful people. And they, I'm like angry. I'm like, fuck, what's wrong with these guys? And then you see in the next set, there's 2 of them on the next wave. And then there's one last person. I'm getting dragged out by this current. There's another set. And the other guy goes, yeah, you go. He's on the inside. He had right of way. He should take the wave. But no, he's going, you go. I'm going, what's going on here? This is totally beyond my rules. These rules that are set down in stone in my local break, inside surfer, we're going to take everything, right? And so I was like going, wow, this is different. And they're all having fun. All 3 of them in a full joy state. And we're going, what's going on here? Something's going on for me that's not matching in, and it's uncomfortable. And that's the start. That's another kind of part where it starts opening up for me. And then I got back on tour, and there's Porto. Porto's got also a reputation for dropping in. And we're surfing places like G-Land and in the events down the track, and he's just dropping in, and the tour surfers are just so pissed off at Porto. And I said, Porto, what's going on in Tahiti? And this is prior to the North Shore Hawaiian influence, which kind of ironed it out. But he said, no, we surf together on the wave, Tom. And I've gone, wow. And I thought, something's going on here too again. Like, I've got to understand this. I've got to understand this further about what's going on here as part of, in regard to sharing the ride. So, my urge to kind of share the ride became more prominent and more challenging to the status quo. And I'm not here to sort of kind of bring any conclusion to you guys about this. I'm not here to kind of make any decisions for you. But it's obvious that, as we move on into the next phase of this incredible act that we get to do on this funny stuff called water, like this, and there's wind that actually creates the water to kind of get bumpy and start to sort of churn up, and we get inspired by that, and we become alive for that reason. But I'm not here to sort of say, yeah, let's all ride the wave together, but perhaps we are already, and that we can actually be discerning and as to what wave to take, and sort of lift our ability to discern. Discern means to have good judgment. But they actually, as friends, we can actually ride the wave together. And on this wave here, I'm with my good old friend, Ross Clark-Jones, who you may well know, who we've shared many, many waves together, both on land and in the water. He is a wave force himself, unto himself. And it's been quite a journey. It's been a wild journey with Ross. I'm lucky to some degree. Something stopped me perhaps engaging with him at Nazaré. Something. I don't know what she's got up in store for me yet, but something said, oh, maybe you shouldn't go to Nazaré with Ross, Tom. And it's always, and talking about Ross, when he only contacts me when there's a real, there's a big crisis, right? So whenever I get immediate, I've got to contact him. How you going, mate? Oh, yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, we have a good old chat normally, but when there's a crisis, he's boom onto me. He goes, holy shit! But when he was Nazaré, when he got caught in the rocks, I don't know whether you know that incident, when he got caught on the rocks. Well, he got caught in the rocks. He went right, came off his board, just got a little bit too relaxed. I don't know where Ross got that from. He said, I got a little bit relaxed on the bottom turn. I don't know why. I just faded a little bit, and then I got caught on the right, got stuck in the rocks. And that's made for Ross. Ross is made for that, to be caught in critical situations and to get out. He knows, right? He felt it. And then climbing the cliff, that's when it almost came apart, because he had his booties and his gloves, and he had all the vests and stuff. And he got two-thirds the way up the cliff, and he felt like he couldn't go any further and couldn't go back, but he had to push himself beyond himself to get over the edge. Thankfully, he did. And then it was like, oh, Tom, fuck, like, look at that, talk to me. Me? What am I going to say? But he just needed to get it out, I guess. But it's only then that, we've got this, some of us have those friends, right? And so something stopped me, but sharing the ride with Ross has been extraordinary. And who knows what's coming in the future for that. Here's another example of sharing. This is a local Australian break called 2 Mile down in Victoria. Russell Björk on the inside and Kelly Slater on the outside. Inside, outside, right? It was interesting, this wave, because we had to go and save Russell in this incident way down the inside because he did get hurt. And this is where we, as surfers, really have to know our game if we're going to start sharing waves like this. But just another example I thought I'd sort of bring to mind of critical sort of sharing. But there's a little sharing when we first started towing, Ross and I. We first started towing in 1998. And we had a couple of teams we were towing with. And you can see there we're having a ball. We're just having the best time ever. And this is sort of available to us. And when we get this, a chance to when we get a chance to kind of open up to sharing, a whole bunch of good stuff starts to happen. A whole world starts to open up to us. We start to sort of literally offer much more space to create. And I think that's why we're here today with the Surf Fest, to sort of start to create space for ourselves to get a further connection and understanding with each other so we can keep moving and actually share it with the outer world and anyone new who's coming to it. Just one last little story about, and I don't have any images for this, but this is one of those waves that you wouldn't want to share at Pipeline. I'm actually about to bail out here because the wave is closing out, but it's just one of those big pipeline waves that just grows and grows and grows and ends up, you're just like, you, and you send it into the abyss. And the only thing you're sharing is oblivion, right? You're sharing your chemistry with oblivion, and Joao really shared beautifully about, what to do in these situations. But experience counts. Experience. Go for direct experience before sort of building any belief. And I think the practices and so on that you gave sound perfect for that, Joel. Kelly Slater, he's a good buddy. I got to meet Kelly Slater when he was quite young. He still had hair. I still had hair. But Kelly kept on winning world titles, right? And he got really bored. Can you believe that? That's part of nature. He just wants to create and break the symmetry of what's going on. So he just goes, right, I want to test out new formats, right, to surf under. Can we, do something about this? So we got the ASP, back then, this was 21 years ago, and he got a whole bunch, just to make it more entertaining, he brought a bunch of B-lister celebrities from a couple of musicians, and so on. Got Pam over there. Pam, anyway, we know about Pam. But Pam, we all went over and we got all the best surfers he could, and we gathered on Tavarua Island. It was called the Kelly Slater Invitational. Quicksilver had something to do with it. He had MTV making a production around it. MTV being a major sort of production back then, drew a lot of audience. And I remember landing on the island, and Kelly goes, "Tom, I've got something for you. I think you're going to really like this. It's the sharing format." And this is the first time I thought, wow, he knows, because I'd shared a few waves with him. And he goes, "We're just trying a whole bunch of different formats, but you're going to surf with Tom Carroll as a team." I go, "Whoa." And Tom knew I was a little bit kind of crazy on the wave. Tom being very kind of conservative and a little bit shy of me and my nature. He kind of, I could see him go, "Ooh," like this is, "Hey, Tom, loosen up. It's okay. We can surf a wave together and we can do good," right? But anyway, I never forget the first wave I saw in the sharing format. Okay? They were clearing the water at Cloudbreak. It's about 5 to 6 feet. And it's just this really nice, nice little bit of wind on it. So there's a bit of a crumble. Anyway, I'm down the end of the lineup because I couldn't get out of the lineup. You get kicked out. Get out. The contest's going to start. I'm down the end, frothing to see the first wave ridden in the sharing format. First wave was Corey Lopez and Andy Irons, right, on this wave. It was like something else, huh? They rode the whole wave, just spray, fins, boards, just tearing this wave apart. 2 tracks, 2 fans of spray, it double everything. And it was critical. And they kicked out, both together, right close to, I was with Kelly, who was still in the water too, and we were yelling out, screaming for them, and yeah, they couldn't hear us. What they did then really lit me up, was they started paddling back out together, talking about what they were going to do on the next wave together. And that sort of warmed my heart at that moment. It brought something true to me that can be true for all of us, that we can share the ride. And that sharing component, who knows what, like I said, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 minutes, but who knows what's going to happen in the future, that perhaps there'll be a sharing format coming up. Imagine John Florence surfing mixed doubles, right, with Katie Simmers at Pipeline. Just imagine, And it really, in that MTV show, that when they put that out, that big the big show on the Invitational, the most watched segment in the feedback from viewers was in the sharing format of surfing, even non-surfers. So there's something there, and to draw our attention to. It's some part of ourselves, and you can make of it what you like. That's what it's about. Surfing's like that. And we're literally here just to surf the wave, right? Whether it be in life, the analogy of surfing waves, surfing it on land, surfing within ourselves. And this is I better wrap it up. This is a photograph of a good friend of mine that we just going out to share some waves together. A day where we had to paddle out and support each other. And we got some beautiful waves together, all around riding a wave. And I hope you guys can have that experience, as I have, come from that hyper, narrow, competitive drive to a more open experience in surfing. Thank you very much for having me here. And yeah.